one to start with. So what has happened? What has happened over these um, past few weeks as we've been discussing this? Well, I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but if you've seen the bulletins and or looked online, we've been on this journey that we take twice a year, trying to look at it's the same journey, but we try to look at it from a different perspective every time we do it. So what has occurred is the first thing is that we recognized that alone we're powerless. And when we say that, and we've said this many times, that this recognition that alone we're powerless is just a recognition that in the ego we have no real ability to move to where we want to go. It seems sometimes that we do. It seems like we can operate alone and do all sorts of things and get some results that we want, but generally speaking, we fail, or the result that we thought we wanted ends up to not be what we wanted, and it always leaves us with this a sense of emptiness, because the ego itself really isn't anything. It really is a construct. It's like a combination of a bunch of experiences that are changing all the time, but there's one thing about the ego that always remains the same, is that it thinks it needs to protect itself. And so it protects itself by throwing up all sorts of distractions at us, makes all sorts of promises that it doesn't keep, and it has us living in a delusion that we should, if we're not, that we should be in control of our life, and if we're not, that just means there's something wrong with us, and we need to do more of what it says to do. So we come to this place of a surrender, of saying that I recognize that by myself I can't do this. By myself I can't overcome the suffering. And the suffering is always there as a result of pursuing pleasure or trying to avoid pain at the cost of the common welfare, which is really our own welfare. So we think by doing these things that we're going to make things better for ourselves, but because what we do affects everything, it actually makes things worse for us, continues the suffering no matter what. And then, so we accept it then. We accept this idea that, okay, this is how it is. And accepting it then is like, it is the setting aside of the delusion, that the delusion was telling us. And so we have these things going on where we're pursuing pleasure, we're avoiding pain, and delusion is telling us that we're justified in whatever we do to keep those two activities going, right? So acceptance then puts us in the state of mind where we realize that that actually was delusion. We're deluding ourselves, and we're living in the midst of an illusion that we have created out of our own perception. And so then this next principle comes in and says it doesn't have to be this way. That there's a possibility to move from this aloneness, this separateness, back into an integrated whole, which the 12-step programs call a restoration to sanity. So the idea comes to us that once we have surrendered, if we continue to work with, and you can call it God, you could call it in the Buddhist tradition. There's these three things. You would take refuge in the Buddha, which you could think about that as just being your highest self, or you can think about it as being Christ-minded, however you do it. But this is the spiritual side. So we take refuge in the Buddha or Christ. We take refuge in the Dharma, the principles, the steps themselves, the traditions, or just, if we like, just universal principle of loving kindness, really. And then we take refuge in the Sangha, which is the community, which for us could, I mean, if really we expand our thinking about what this means. We could say, when people first get into recovery, they become comfortable in a community of recovering people. And as a result of that, they begin to take chances. Their relationships change with others in that community. And then those lessons learned in that teach us that we can then think of our community as being larger. Then we're able to go back to our family and interact in a way that we perhaps never could before. And we look at our neighborhood, we look at our communities, we look at the larger. Finally, we get to the point where we realize, and this is the restoration to sanity, that we realize that we are part of the whole thing. That is the key to this idea in the second step. And then the next thing that we did was we aligned our will with goodwill. That we said that our decision-making ability, the ability to decide between the self-will, which is the ego's agenda, and God's will or goodwill, what's best for everybody, we have this ability to choose between the two, and we decided it was, since it comes, and this is such a, it seems like the understanding of this just slips away in a second. This understanding that what's best for everyone involved has to be what's best for me. But in a second, the ego can come in and say, no, take this shortcut, do this, do that to get your thing. You need to get this, you need to make this happen. And then, of course, suffering occurs. Maybe not that minute, but it's coming. It's always coming. And then we do, the next thing we do is we do this investigation. We investigate what has happened. We in recovery, we call it an inventory. We take an inventory. And we look closely at these patterns that have occurred. We see that ultimately, when we do a good enough investigation, we understand that this is not us, that this behavior that we've been involved in, even our thoughts, even our fears, that they are really not us. This is what, in a good inventory, what's shown to us is, yes, this is our behavior. And this is very important. We're responsible for our behavior. Even though the behavior itself is not us, we're responsible for it. And we are responsible for our thoughts, really. And we find that later as we go on, but we don't identify with the behavior. We don't identify with the suffering as being us. It's an experience that we're having. It's something that down the road we're going to want to try to heal. We're going to want to try to do our best to put things right, to put things in order. And then after we do this investigation, we found out that it's best if we share it with somebody else. We have a confidant, we have a sponsor, we have somebody who we can talk to about these things. So we lay it out, and it's very important that this non-identification become very clear to us that we are not these things that we have done. We are not. Listen, this is important. We are not even the good things that we have done. We are not our bad thoughts. We are not our good thoughts. We're just reporting. These are our experiences. When we go to our confidant, we're reporting these experiences and the suffering that has occurred as a result of the experiences. And then an amazing thing happens when we bring it. And a really important part of this is to realize that it's not just the two people talking. That isn't Jesus said, when two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also in the midst of them. And what he meant by that is when he said gathered in my name, he didn't mean gathered dedicated to me. Like that's how some people identify that. They think when you gather together in celebration of Jesus, there I am in the midst of you. That's not what he meant. He meant when he said in my name, that meant very clearly in the idioms of the time, it meant after my nature. When you gather together the way I gathered together with you, then there I am, there the Christ Spirit is in the midst. So the Christ Spirit, of course, is that divine presence. You just call it God. So the two come together with this intention of healing, with this intention of good, with this intention of love, and what's established out of the two is the three that are holy. And so then this new perspective arises, a new way of seeing all of these events. And we may have, even though I'm telling you, and a bunch of other people will tell you, that when you look at your inventory, at your journal, at your investigation, and you see these things and you're thinking, I am substandard. I am less than what I should be. I'm really in some things. Listen, I'm just going to tell you, I have done some despicable things in my life. And when I looked at this stuff on paper, it was very easy to identify that was me. So, but there's an amazing thing that happens when we come together like this, and really it is a holy way, that it is shown that all of these things that I found in myself are also present in others. All of the things that I wish to avoid, all the things I wish that I hadn't been involved in, but also all of the good things that I have found. That all of these things are present in others. And it turns out that the nature, and as the fifth step says, the exact nature of our wrongs, it turns out that that's just self-centered fear, that's just fear. In other words, the nature meaning where it springs from. Where all this behavior, which I previously thought was me, where that really springs from is from fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of being isolated, the fear of not being accepted, the fear of not getting, it's actually all the same. It's the fear that comes from what we've talked about many times, the original sin, when we decided we were separate from God. The whole Garden of Eden incident. The apple affair, that whole thing, that's where it comes from. This when we ate of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, we decided we were separate, and all of the guilt and fear comes springing out of that event, which is caught in race mind, part of what makes us up. And some people who don't have that particular myth in their culture, they've got another thing but the whole idea is it's duality. When we decided there was duality, that there was dark and light, when we decided that there was good and evil, when we decided that there was us and them, me and you, when we decided that there was a barrier between us all, that was it. That's the original sin. And even that, and that's important, it's not something that we do feel tremendous guilt about it under the surface. We may not even consider it in our conscious mind, but it's causing a lot of problems under the surface. So, but even that, it's nothing to feel guilty about. It's something to heal. It's something to fix. It's something to take care of. We can't heal it on our own. So what ends up happening is we look at these fears that arise, the separate faces of the fear that arise. And what arises is conditions, first of all. Conditions of, as long as you do what I think you ought to do, then I'm going to give you my approval and my affection. If you don't, I won't. So we call it conditional love, but it's just conditions on everything. It's not just, this is very interesting. It's not just that we're expecting other people to behave the way we want them to behave, although that's a huge part of it. Even if we think we're not doing it, we're doing it, because anytime we see somebody acting in a way that offends our sensibilities, we need to realize that those sensibilities, those are just perceptions. First of all, they're temporary, they're not real. And if we were given another set of experiences, we would see it from a different angle and we wouldn't even think the same way about it. Now, there's some things you say, well, there's some things, that are just beyond the pale that nobody could accept. Not even talking about accepting them. I'm just saying we need to realize that how we see these things is totally up to us. And so we have this we have these conditions, and part of it is we put people into roles. So we say, my family members, they have these roles. And, generally we tell ourselves, we love our family no matter what and all of this, but we have conflicts in the family, but we put them in a role. This is how we're used to it. This is how they act. So this is the role that I have for them. If they start acting differently, that's very disturbing. Even if the person is trying to get better, even if the person is trying to change their behavior for the better, it's like it doesn't jive in our mind. We want to keep seeing them in that same role. So then we have roles for just in general that we put on people in society. We expect people to act the way that we have been conditioned to see them throughout our life. So we put people in roles, and these roles could be assigned by race. They could be assigned by sex. The roles could be assigned by sexual orientation. And it has absolutely nothing to do with reality. And it has everything to do with how we've been conditioned and how we've conditioned ourselves to see them. So so conditional love is not just saying, act this way and I'll treat you right. It's also all the other images that we hold, all the prejudices, all of the stuff that we hold in our minds concerning other people. So the opposite is unconditional love, which we've defined here in the past as feeling connected to all life and wanting only good to come to all. We can practice doing this with individual people. And when we practice long enough, then it can begin to happen, in a larger sense, with more and more. But we'll notice, I think, through our whole lives, we'll notice that now, I see what I've done. I'm paying attention to what's going on, so I see what I've done. I've moved this person into a category. Now I think, and then there's other things we think people are playthings. We mess around with them for a little bit, and then we put them on the shelf till the next time. This happens in obvious ways, but it also happens in subtle ways. So then there of course is envy, and envy is like seeing the good fortune of another person and wanting it for ourselves. Somehow be saying, and it's it actually, we should know that the conditional love just spills out into all of these next things. So of course the opposite of it is being happy for the happiness of others, and to cultivate this, and to congratulate people, at least in our minds, on their good fortune. Be happy for whatever occurs for them, regardless, right? And then we have this part of this covetousness is the if only syndrome, saying if only I had this or that, and that's part of this craving. It's part of this craving that the Buddhist said all human suffering is a result of craving, and it's been translated as desire, but it doesn't really mean the desire of your heart. It doesn't mean the desire of good. It means craving, meaning I need it. I want it. I'm going to get it. Whatever that it is, right? So craving has us, in this particular context, it has us saying, if I had it, then I'm cool. If I don't, so Ajahn Chah said, you people are crazy. He said, you want what you don't have. You don't want what you have. Crazy. Why don't you want what you have and not what you don't have? So this is the practice. The practice is to accept what is. The practice is to accept what is right now with gratitude. To be grateful for what is right now, knowing that even what is right now that doesn't seem pleasant, that buried in it is a seed of good that can blossom for us if we just stay present. So then, of course, and we've talked about this many times, that when the if only does happen, we've been walking around in in this craving state of mind, saying if only I get the raise or the promotion or whatever, this person, and then it happens, it's not good enough. As soon as it happens, it's not good enough. I mean, you have the experience when you like, there's something that you want to purchase. You want to have this because somebody on TV told you how cool it was. And this is our culture, right? They're just showing you over and over again, you need to have this and that. And look at these people who have this and that. They're very happy. And so this is our striving, is to get more stuff. And then you get the stuff. And it's not that cool. I mean, it's cool for a minute. And you can even be like grateful, saying, oh yeah. I mean, the whole car thing. I mean, I like driving a nice car. I have a nice car. I have a couple of nice cars. I love driving them. But here's the thing. And when I am able to sit in the car and just allow myself to be in it and then be in the flow of traffic and just feel this, be in the experience, it's great. But let somebody pull up next to me in a nicer car. And then I'm going, oh, suddenly I become substandard. Suddenly my craving comes back and says, oh, I want that car. And this can happen like a day after, right? So all of these things are so, it's just, so then greed, the only cure for greed is to be filled with the Spirit. The only cure is to be filled with the Spirit. And you can think about it for recovering people. You can say the only solution is to be filled with the Spirit of recovery. That's the only thing that fills up that hole inside. For anybody, just I can be filled with love. Be filled with the spirit of kindness. It really doesn't matter. That's the kind of stuff that fills it up. The Spirit itself fills the hole, right? And then you can be happy whatever you're driving, as long as it's running, right? And I've been in that place where what I was driving did not look that cool, but I could be grateful for the fact that it was running. So. And then there's this inertia, this inability to move, or the crazy activity, just run around like a chicken with a head cut off. This is the inertia, is just this physical law of a body in motion tends to stay in motion, a body at rest tends to stay at rest, unless acted upon by a greater force, right? So the greater force that can act upon this inertia is the greater force of proper service, of knowing purpose. And acting on purpose. So then what happens when I begin to act on purpose, which is trying to bring service, trying to bring love into all of my activities, when I begin to do that, then I move when it is appropriate to move, and I rest when it is appropriate to rest. And I don't get myself involved in all kinds of crazy things, and I'm able to do what Stephen Covey's wife said was, when there is a greater yes burning within, it's easy to say no. So, because once we establish this in our mind that we want to be of service, it's very easy to fall into this place where what we do is we say, anytime anybody asks us for something, that's what we need to do. Now, Jesus was clear about this too, as he said, if someone asks you for something that's within your power, go ahead and do it. However, if it interferes with the greater picture, and I'll just be clear about it, if it interferes with the common welfare, what's best for everyone, it's something we need to say. Why do we not say no? Because we're spiritual people. We want to appear to be spiritual. We don't want to say no to anybody. We want to do, because we want people to say, oh, he is so nice. He's just a great guy. But we need to remember purpose. And I remember that a lot of times people will ask us for things that aren't good for them. A lot of times people will ask us for stuff that they think is important, but really, when you get quiet, you know it really isn't that important. So we're able then to move out of inertia into proper service. Right action is what it's called. Vanity is the killer. Vanity is the thing that has us identified with all this stupid stuff. Vanity identifies us with how we look. Vanity identifies us with how we act. Vanity identifies us with, where we may be falling short. So vanity, it's always very easy to think about it in terms of having an inordinately high opinion of oneself, but really, it's the opposite. Where it comes from is having a low opinion of oneself and then having to try to act like we're something more. So this humility comes in, this humility of acceptance, of knowing who we are. That in thinking about this, actually who we are is this, at our foundation is this pure and loving spirit. Start with that, pure and loving spirit. But humility also has us able to take So yes, I'm pure and loving spirit, and I'm ignoring all of the stuff that we identified in that inventory. I'm pure and loving spirit. None of that has anything to do with me. All these things that I've done in the past, I've let that go. That has nothing to do with me anymore. No good, because we have to take responsibility from that position of knowing who we are. We're able to take the proper action on those things that we're responsible for. And then the last one is this anger that just bubbles. And the Course in Miracles says about it that you don't be fooled. That even you think, oh yes, I'm getting much better. I'm so much more peaceful than I've been before. I'm not going off on people. I'm not yelling. But it says just the mildest irritation is just hiding this rage that is right below the surface. Because until we're actually free of the fear of separation, until we're actually free, totally free of this idea that we're alone in a dangerous world, that anger is right there because it is the most apparent symptom of the fear. It is there. It's there, and it'll come, and it can just come out. Now, here's what I think is great about being on this path, is that actually behaviors do get better. And we find ourselves peaceful more and more of the time. And so this is why we have to, because here's what happens in this seventh step, is we actually ask for this power greater than ourselves, whatever we call it, to relieve us of these burdens. And here's the whole, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say about this, that once having done that, divine intervention actually happens. What happens is God doesn't just take it away, or however the Buddha doesn't just instantly come into our minds and heal all of these things. What happens is a situation is created in which we are able to choose what we do in every situation. So rather than going straight to conditional love, we are having a choice where we can release whatever it was that we were about to list down and extend that unconditional love to the person. We have a moment to decide before we get all worked up over the good fortune. So I can remember I had someone in the church who was very upset that the whole company had taken a pay cut and their CEO had got a raise. Well, that's upsetting. That is upsetting. But it triggers this envy that says, what does it say? It says, he doesn't deserve it. I deserve it. Or you could be more magnanimous about it and say, we deserve it. Me and my brothers in the company, we deserve it, but he doesn't. The fact of the matter is, they do deserve it. Everybody in the company deserves to be compensated correctly. I mean, it's just a principle, right? But that doesn't mean you have to be mad because this one person got a raise. Somebody decided. I'm going to guarantee you that person by himself didn't decide that. Somebody decided. The board of directors decided. That's how it works, right? So just be happy for his good fortune, but still say, I can be happy for his good fortune and still say, you're not treating the other employees correctly. To be mad at the CEO about him having good fortune, that just clouds the entire issue. That just makes, now I've got a target that I can point at and be mad at. It's not going to help resolve the situation, but I got somebody, at the coffee machine, at the water cooler, I got somebody to complain about. Makes it seem better. Doesn't get any better. So we get, by By asking, what happens is it humbles the ego. It humbles the ego. So what we're actually saying when we ask for this divine intervention is we're saying, I really don't have any direct control over these defects of character, over the behavior that comes out of these defects of character. I have, in a way, I have some direct control. I can hold on with both hands, grit my teeth, and just force myself not to act in this way I've identified is the path of suffering. I can just say, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to just sit here and by God and by golly, I'm just not going to do it. But what happens is when pressure is applied over time, we're trying to do this on our own, we break down. We can't do it. We try to do this through our own force of will, we cannot do it. Something, just something out of the blue will happen and it'll all just burst and come spilling out. So we ask, as soon as we ask for this divine help, it's a relaxation. It's like I'm saying, I'm taking this burden off of me. I'm taking this burden off of me and I'm giving it. Saying, here, take this. I'll deal with the moment-by-moment things and you give me guidance as to what to do in those moment-by-moment decisions. So we're healed is what happens. We're healed. We're free. And what we find is the biggest thing is grievance. Grievance this is the thing that just keeps bubbling in our minds to say, man, I'm going to stop this complaining about life. I'm going to stop complaining about life. I'm going to get in the midst of life and live it. We realize it's so easy to find something wrong, so easy to judge others, judge situations as negative. It's so tempting to blame others or circumstances for whatever seeming problems show up. It's all to move this. The grievances actually block us from the good that is available to us in the moment. They actually keep us locked into a victim mentality that if you say, today's the day. Say, I'm giving this to you. Spirit, God, Buddha, nature, Christ consciousness, I'm giving this to you. I'm tired of playing the victim. So today, let me renounce my grievances. You take them, deal with them. I'm going to forget about them for a minute. I don't want them. I don't want these things anymore. Every time that I think about that I'm being put upon, I'm going to tell myself the truth. I'm free. When I decide, I'm free. If I give it away, I am free from resentment. I'm free from regret. That's enough. Thank you.